Dear rider, welcome to the 2024 KTM EXC International Press Conference. My name is Giacomo Zappoli and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for the KTM Global team. Tonight, I have two tasks. Introduce to you the 2024 KTM EXC range and have a deep overview with our expert from R&D and Product Management, and explain you why we are here in Lesotho, South Africa. But before doing that, let's deep dive in what the KTM brand is about, what our ready-to-race claim means to us, and last but not least, celebrate our 70th year as a company. KTM was indeed born in 1953, when maybe you remember the color of our logo was yellow. In 1996, the first KTM showed the orange color in any racing championship, and in 1998, the orange color arrived to our logo. And all the way until now, as you might see here, we still have orange as our main color, but the logo became black. Over these 70 years, KTM has achieved a lot. And to stay close to our claim, ready to race, we want to count also the amount of championship that we actually achieved. So looking back, we have in our portfolio 333 World Championships, out of which 126 are World Enduro titles. Looking back at last year, 2022, KTM has definitely had an important year, with Manuel Lettenbichler coming from a very bad injury at the beginning of the year, and despite that, managing to win the 2022 FIM Hard Enduro title. And on the other hand, Josep Garcia, bringing home several victories over the entire year during the Enduro GP, and topping it out with the individual victory of the 2022 ISD, the most prestigious race of the Enduro world. Well guys, talking about Garcia, I actually have something from him towards you.
Hi guys, it's Job Garcia. I'm here at the Enduro GP of Spain. I'm sorry I can't be with you, but I'm sure that you are having a great time. As all of you know, this year I changed classes from the 350 to the new 250, and it's a challenge that I wanted to take. The new 250 is awesome. The engine is more powerful than the previous model, and the bike is incredible to ride and race. The wait is finally over. Will you take that challenge?
Gracias, Josep. We are definitely here to accept this challenge. But before doing that, guys, I want to explain to you why are we actually here in Lesotho doing the International Press Conference. Many of you might know Lesotho as a landlocked country in South Africa. You can think about it like San Marino or Vatican City in Italy. But on the other hand, it's actually a very famous country for one specific stat. The entire country sits above 1400 meters on the sea level, which means oxygen, it will be a precious commodity not only for the rider but also for the bikes. Last but not least, Lesotho is one of the most welcoming countries you can find around the world, not only for its incredible landscapes and mountains, but especially for the people. You will see many videos from our guys of people welcoming you and waving at you all the time while you ride around here. So guys, if you ever have the chance, come over and check it out yourself. But now guys, I will explain to you why Lesotho is such an important country for KTM. Looking back at 2016, we actually came here with two prototypes of the bike under this black cloth, with our two test riders, Andreas Lettenbichler and Lars Inekoll, testing the capabilities of this new generation of bikes. And to top that out, over several and countless hours of testing, we actually had Manuel Lettenbichler coming last year in 2022, racing Roof of Africa, one of the most important races in the hard enduro world. So guys, I think you know all the reasons why we're actually here in Lesotho. You understood where KTM is coming from. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the 2024 KTM EXC range.
Success only comes from never settling, constantly pushing beyond the boundaries, even when you're at the top. In fact, we would say, especially when you're at the top. KTM challenged its two test riders to push the limits of their two enduro machines further than ever before in an extraordinary location.
Here it is, guys, the 2024 KTM EXC. Challenge accepted. With 95% new components, there is a lot to talk about on this bike. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the product manager for the off-road segment, Fabian Gustav.
Thanks, Jack.
Hey, Flo.
And on the other end, the product marketing manager for the off-road segment, Dieter Elgerbirt.
Thank you, mate.
So guys, stage is yours.
Wow, Fabian, what a pleasure to have you here and being in Lesotho. But before we came to Lesotho, having a 95% new bike, I challenged you to give us 4 key takeaway points on the new bike. I know that was quite a challenge, but you definitely rose up to it.
Yes, I accepted that challenge, Dieter. And actually, I kept myself busy over the last years, challenging also our R&D development team. So these guys really came up with something completely different. And if I need to take now one of the first highlight points, I would say it's the all-new frame-subframe combination.
Definitely, I think there's a lot playing in that. And then also the suspension. I noticed there's big changes happening there.
Exactly. Suspension-wise, we made a big step forward. So the first time we bring a WP Pro Components-inspired suspension on a serial product.
So cool, mate. But then I'm a big 4-stroke fan. So what's the changes that we actually made on the 4-stroke?
Well, on the 4-strokes, we need to look specifically on our small engine platform. The 250, 350 got some major update. 4-stroke ratio change. You might have seen the video with Josep Garcia. He really enjoys that engine, so do I. And besides that, we have plenty of talking points about our electronics.
But I know we didn't just stop at the 4-stroke, we also went into the 2-strokes.
Sure, 2-strokes, probably the biggest invention or development in the last decade. We have now finally our throttle body injection also on the 2-strokes, and additionally the power valve, electronic power valve.
Fabian, I've got so much questions already and I really want to know more about these 4 points that you mentioned. But I know instead of us boring all of you for the next hour, we decided to get all the specialists in each field coming out, talking to you. We've got 3 different breakout sessions. So we've got the guys from R&D that are going to go into the frame, chassis, mention all the changes we did there. Then we also have the guys from WP Suspension. They're going to give us all the cool technical deep dive into what they changed on the suspension. And then last but not least, we've got the guys from the engine department. They're going to dive into 4-stroke, 2-stroke, and everything that happened there. So on that note, let's dive in.
Welcome from my side. My name is Dominik Bachmeier. I'm the Chief Engineer of the new generation model year 2024. And today I'll give you a small introduction on our development work on this bike.
I think the first main talking point is the frame, right?
We had the target to get more stability, more safety, but without losing your racing speed.
And how could we achieve that?
We achieved that by increasing the stiffness of a lot of parts on the frame and also the whole chassis. So let's start with the frame. It's completely new. As you can see here on this slide, on the left side there is the model year 2020, on the right side is the model year 2024 frame, and they look completely different. So you have on the predecessor a connection from the steering stem to the shock mounting, and on the new generation there is no connection. So if you get a hit from the rear wheel, we do not have the connection to the front and you won't feel it there anymore that hard.
So how many parts do we actually have in such a frame here?
We do have about 41 parts and only 9 of them remained the same, such as for example the standard welding nuts or other machined parts from the predecessor.
All right, so that's why we talk about 95% new bike.
And that's true, yeah.
You want to show us how we changed the rigidity and stiffness of the frame?
So I have another slide for you. As you can see here, we have the calculation of the frame stiffness. It's the torsional load case that you see here. On the left side again, the model year 2020. On the right side, model year 2024. It's color coded. So green means there's nearly no deformation at all. Red to slightly violet means there's the highest deformation of the frame. You can get the opinion that the model year 2024 frame looks more displaced in the front than the predecessor, but as you can see in the rear at the shock mounting, the predecessor is much more displaced than the new one. That's because of the new shock mounting on the frame. It connects the two outer tubes of the frame, which increases the stiffness on the torsional load.
Pretty impressive to me.
So we do have 3 different frames for our model lineup. One frame for the 150 bikes, one frame for 250-300, and one frame for the 4-stroke lineup.
Then in how far do they differ? Is there any big difference to it?
There are no big differences, only the engine mountings differ on the frames. Whole setup, the rigidity and stiffness of the frames is exactly the same. Let's go to the next part. We do have the absolutely new foot pegs on the bike. They are topology optimized due to some parameters, input parameters, and they come from our testing. So we did a lot of testing on the foot pegs. We increased dimensions to front, to the rear, tested 10 different variations on them, and the outcome was this new foot peg, as you can see on this slide, the orange one. 3 millimeters more to the rear, 3 millimeters more to the front, and 7 millimeters outwards.
So Dominic, looking at these foot pegs makes me think about how you can come up with such a design. How does the process in your R&D work look like? You first go out on the tracks testing, and afterwards, how do you arrive at that design?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have those input parameters now, put it into the topology optimization, and therefrom we get the lightest possible geometry with that parameters.
I think there's one more topic you want to mention, right?
One further topic is on the foot pegs. We do have increased the flip angle to 45 degrees, so they will flip easier backwards if you go into deep ruts or go to a tree or something like that. No big problems anymore.
Okay, so in the end, a bigger surface area to step on and a greater angle with less risk to hook on external objects.
Let's go to the next part. We do have completely new the triple clamp. It's again an aluminium forged, but it looks like a machined one.
What about the character of this new triple clamp?
The target with the design of the triple clamp was again the same as on frame and all the other parts. We increased the stiffness, changed it to more stability and safety for the rider without losing the speed. Another point is that we have changed the behavior of the triple clamp in combination with the front fork. As you can see on the slide, the left side is again the predecessor triple clamp and the right one the new one, new generation 2024. So on the old one, if you tighten the screws, the displacement of the triple clamp is not equally distributed. So you clamp the fork in a way that the inner tube can get stuck. On the new one, we tried to equally distribute this force so that there is no problem when the inner tube comes to that point and the suspension can work freely.
This is also the reason why you never should over-tighten the bolts on the triple clamp, right?
Yeah, that's true.
On our new design, we also have the Newton meters engraved on the triple clamp.
20 on the upper one and 15 on the lower.
All right, so don't over-tighten your triple clamp bolts. You want the best behavior of your bike.
Furthermore, we have a fixed handlebar mounting, so you have a more direct feeling to your bike. And even if you crash, the handlebar won't get that easy bent as on our predecessor.
I see there are also different positions possible, right?
You can flip it again. You have one position in the rear, one in the front, and you can change to different heights.
What about the possibility of having a rubber-mounted system? Is there something in place?
We have foreseen into the triple clamp the place to mount a rubber-mounted one. So we have in the TA spare parts catalog a rubber-mounted one, and you can attach it easily.
So in the end, there's the choice for the riders, whatever they prefer from our Power Parts program. More comfort, more comfortable ride with rubber damping, or the direct feeling of the direct mounted handlebar. Maybe, what about this bar mount? It also looks completely different, right? The surface area got bigger. What's the big benefit of that one?
The bar mount increases again the stability, so if you crash, the handlebar won't get that easily bent.
Okay, so no more twisted handlebars after crashes. Cool.
Next point. Huh?
Let's go on.
So, the stiffness of our swing arm was a big point in our development.
How many hours have you spent on the swing arm, Dominic, working? Could you count that?
It's hard to think about, so several hundred could it be, yeah.
For sure, ton of work.
So we have a completely new swing arm. It's Also a part that we increased in the stiffness. We do have started with the same shape as the predecessor ones and ended up with this one. We saw relatively fast that there is much more torsional stiffness needed and added in the lower side a kind of an extra material that increases the torsional stiffness a lot, but without gaining weight. So we have about weight reduction of 2% on the swing arm.
I think also there was a change of the rear axle diameter, right?
Yeah.
Why that? Why did that happen?
We changed from 20 to 22 millimeters because we also wanted to increase the stiffness and stability of the bike. And now you have still the possibility to reuse your spare part wheels if you replace the distance pushes, the outer ones, replace the ceilings, and also replace the inner distance tube.
All right, so with a bit of homework, you can still use your wheel set you have from the old generation back home. I think there are also some improvements for the mechanics out there.
We do have here a small nose on the left side. On the right side, it's on the brake caliper. So you can put your wheel into, it will hold right there, and then put the rear axle into. No more separate holding of the rear wheel. Also, we changed the shock mounting. It's now the same as on the upper side. So you have the same bearings and sealings on the bottom and the top of the shock, easier to change.
The chain glider looks also quite different to me in the back. What about the integration of that chain guard? Is this something you thought about from the beginning, or?
Yeah, we thought on it on the beginning, so it's much more integrated now. We do have a smooth surface transition from the swing arm to the chain guard. There are much less angles of attack if you get to a tree or to a rock or something like that.
I think the last thing we wanted to mention was the visible chain markings from above, right?
Now it's really easy to see, easy to change chain tension.
Service life, maintenance life got much easier once more.
The next one is a bit more a part of a theoretical part. I want to describe you the squat or anti-squat. How is it defined? We have several input parameters. We do have the yellow line describing the chain force created from the engine. We do have the center of the swing arm in green, and where those two intersect, we draw a line from the rear wheel base through this intersection to the vertical line of the front wheel base. Then we need the center of gravity as a kind of a reference. And if we now are under this center of gravity as the reference, we are in the anti-squat. If we are above, we are in the squat.
Okay, Dominik, listening to this theoretical approach here and how we achieve a squat or an anti-squat, I'm wondering how it really feels then when riding the bike. Could you describe what the squat feels like and what the anti-squat feels like?
Squat means that if you open the throttle, the rear wheel will tend to be pulled inwards. So the center of gravity of the whole bike lowers, front wheel will get light, you will get more or less a loose feeling in the front, so maybe not that stable anymore. On the opposite, if you do have anti-squat, the rear wheel will tend to be pushed outwards, so center of gravity keeps high. The front wheel will be better in contact with the ground, more control over the bike. Bike balance will be much more better, and you have a lot of traction on the rear wheel.
What concepts of squat or anti-squat are we following now with this all new generation?
We still stick to anti-squat. We was also on the predecessor, but we got a step more into that direction now.
What's next on our list?
Next point is the new subframe. We have a two-component subframe. It contains aluminium, consists of aluminium and polyamide. So we used aluminium where it's necessary and useful at the connection points to the frame. Then we have used polyamide where it helped us to integrate functions such as, for example, integrating sensors, temperature sensor. On the right side, we integrated, for example, the bushes of the exhaust. So no more losing them if you mount them on the bike.
So on the old aluminium subframe from the previous generation, we had a lot of add-on parts, right?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So we don't need that anymore with this concept.
It's all in, yeah.
Okay.
Furthermore, we checked a lot the stiffness and durability of the subframe. So if you crash, there is a benefit on it. On the predecessor, we had the problem that if you crash, it gets bent and stays bent. On the new one, it also bends, but it bends back.
In worst case, you still can finish the race and you don't need to give up. That's basically the message, right?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Another step towards more ready to race for KTM. Looking at this whole subframe concept here, Dominic, it makes me think of what is actually inside of here.
We do have here now no more fuses or relays anymore. There's the ECU, the battery, and the new device, the OCU.
What is the OCU? What does it stand for?
It's the off-road control unit. You can see here 5 LED lights. They will flash on green if the bike's running. If anything goes wrong on the wiring, a short circuit or something like that, the LED will go to red. And then you have the chance to repair it. If it's checked, if it's fine, the LED will switch back to green again and you can ride on.
So in the end, no more carrying fuses.
No, there's nothing to add on for you.
All right. And when, let's say, the light doesn't work anymore, what am I supposed to do then?
Replace the light, check the LEDs and it's fine again.
So another step forward.
Yeah, but I think the light won't get stuck anymore because
Okay.
it lasts 2000 hours.
What's the story about the light? It's a completely new concept I'm seeing.
We changed from bulb light to a LED light. It does have an increased light output of about 300%.
300%.
Yeah,
That makes it 3 times better than the old one.
maybe even see it on the day.
Okay, all right, impressive. Then Dominic, I also have seen here on the way to the light, we still have an oil tank.
Yeah, that's true.
So the 2-strokes still come with oil tank.
Yeah.
Generally, is there something to say about the bodywork for enduro riding?
Yeah, we stick to our slim fit bike, so you have a lot place to move on it for hard enduro or classic enduros.
I guess some people might be wondering what these fins are on our front fender. Could you give here a brief explanation of what's happening?
So those fins do prevent you from the dirt coming from the front wheel when you are in corners or something like that, but without losing the cooling air coming to the radiator.
So in the end, 95% new, also chassis-wise, of course. But what about the things which didn't change, Dominic? The remaining 5%?
The remaining 5% are reliable parts, such as our Brembo braking components and clutch components. They stay on the bike.
Very well. So stick to what is good and improve the rest.
Yeah, that's true.
Thanks, Dominic.
You're welcome.
Hello everyone, welcome to my suspension workshop. My name is Sebastian Wolfgruber. I work in the R&D department of WP, responsible for the off-road suspension. So basically when the bike development started, the development of this new generation, we also wanted to do our homeworks and wanted to improve our suspension, and therefore came up with this all-new WP X-Act closed cartridge fork. The closed cartridge concept for us was already the way to go, because it's proven from our racing department and our pro component department very successful, and this was just clear for us that's the way to go. On this new fork we have a hand adjuster, compression adjuster on the top, and a rebound adjuster sitting down there in the axle clamp, also hand adjustable. That's something very handy if you're out in the mountain or in the forest. You can just adjust it without any tools needed. So the new fork has 940 millimeters of length and 300 millimeters of stroke. That's a plus of 8 millimeters, roughly 3% more, and more stroke is always something nice to have. Now let's dive more into some details of this fork. This is the internal closed cartridge which is sitting in the fork, and we have it cut open to give you a more closer and detailed look on the insides. Basically what the closed cartridge concept is all about is that the oil is sitting in the inside and is getting pressurized by this spring. We call this whole assembly sitting in the top the base valve, and the base valve using this pressure spring to put pressure into the oil, and this is helping that the oil is not starting to foam, and therefore you will have a more controlled and constant damping. No loss of damping, and this is something you will definitely feel when you ride the bike. So this is the base valve, and the second most damping relevant part is sitting here. This is called the mid valve, and what you can see here is our brand new CFD optimized main piston. And what is especially noticeable is the new style of how we built the setting here. It's called a lift height setting, and this is giving the fork initially a very plush, comfortable feeling. So this all new closed cartridge spring fork gives you initially a very plush and comfortable feeling, but still a very controlled and constant damping through the whole stroke. Also a special feature of this all new fork is the what we call hydro stop. This is the little cup sitting here, and what it does is in the last third of the stroke, when the cartridge is entering it, it has to push out the oil which is sitting in there and resulting in a ramp up of damping. So the fork is getting really progressive in the end of the stroke, and this is just helping you if you, for example, case a jump, or if you hit a really big stone on a fast section, you will just not feel that the fork is bottoming, or it's not even bottoming anymore, and this is just something which gives you a very safe feeling. Coming to the rear end, we also came up with this all new WP Explore PDS shock, exclusively used by our KTM Enduro lineup. So the benefits of the PDS system are the less weight compared to a linkage system. You have less moving parts who needs to get serviced, and the most beneficial point, you have more ground clearance, which is just helpful if you go over rocky sections, over log trees. The more ground clearance is something really beneficial. What you can see here is it's now a fully hand adjustable shock. We have the high speed and low speed compression clickers sitting here, and the red ring is now a hand adjustable rebound clicker, and this is something which is really coming to play when you are out in the forest or in the mountain and you want to adjust it. You don't need any tools. The length of this new shock is now 403 millimeters. It was shortened by around 20 millimeters, but it still has the same stroke of 103 millimeters. What you can see here is that we now have a new mounting situation. On the old shock we had a mounting fork sitting on the bottom, but now we have the same parts on the top and on the bottom. So we share the same bushings and bearings on the top and on the bottom. What you can see here is that we also have a brand new CFD optimized main piston, which is resulting in a very controlled, constant damping as well, and you will definitely notice that when you ride the bike. We didn't finish our homework there. We also came up with a brand new WP Pro Components lineup for the more racy guys out there. Find the data at your local authorized center.
Hello everybody, my name is Florian Bretterebner. I'm the head of PowerPack Offroad ICE, internal combustion engine it stands for. And I have the honor to present you the all-new KTM EXC PowerPack range, starting with the 150 to 500. We'll jump into my presentation. I will start with the 250 engine, the all-new 250 EXC engine. We completely redesigned the engine casing. It now features an all-new redesigned 6-speed enduro-specific transmission, as well as enduro-specific or redesigned shifting mechanism. We have an optimized, reinforced clutch basket. We still have the bullet-proven DDS clutch system. As I said, completely redesigned engine casing. You may, when you look at the engine, you may see some letters written on it, some tightening torques. As I said, we redesigned them, and every smart idea that we had, we put it into. And as an off-road rider, you don't always have the owner's manual with you. So you can see, okay, coolant, when I drain the coolant, there it is. Here it's the coolant, you have the tightening torque. And another smart feature is that when you have this triangle everywhere, where's the triangle are on the castings, there you have to put the copper washer. So you don't have to matter if you disassemble it for service and you think about, oh, the copper washer, where it was. You don't have to look up the owner's manual. It's really intuitive also to maintain our new power packs. As already mentioned by Josep Garcia, who was really impressed by the power output of the new 250. You may ask yourself, how did they do it? So we did it via altering the bore-stroke ratio. We have now a bigger bore, less stroke. We have increased compression ratio. Due to the altering of the bore-stroke, we also decreased the overall engine height, which made the engine more compact, and it's now really compact, smart design. Staying with the top-end assembly, we also introduced a completely redesigned cylinder head structure. We have reinforced camshaft bearing supports, which you can see over here. We have a new valve cover as well as sealings. We got rid of the half moon design, which sometimes could struggle a bit, or if you're low in maintain, but this is gone. We have now a really smart solution for that. We have for sure completely optimized intake and exhaust ports, and yeah, that's what's overall. Also Josep could really feel the improvement in torque, overall power, response, so the difference is huge. So going on with the 350. The 350, they share the same low-end assembly, which basically means what I said on the 250, like new engine casing, enduro-specific transmission is all the same. So they differ from the primary gearing on, they are the same, means from clutch basket on, the low-end assembly of the 250 is the same as on the 350. On the 350, we still have the same bore-stroke ratio. We are going with slightly increased compression ratio, but almost the same. We did improve the cylinder head structure, so we also completely redesigned it. Had also the same, like getting rid of the half moon sealing. So we got rid of the half moon sealing, and yeah, basically we also have those reinforced camshaft supports, so everything that we improved on the 250 we also did on the 350. So you may ask yourself now why we didn't alter bore-stroke ratio. We are the only manufacturer to have the 350 enduro bike available, and it's not just by incident the most sold one. Yeah? Everybody who ever rode it, it's the perfect middle, and it fits really all. So we stayed with that and took the improvements that really made the 250 great, also done for the 350. The next engine is the 450-500. Unfortunately, I don't have these fancy cut model, but I have some really good animations or pictures also of that. You can see behind me the engine casing, which was main part of engineering on the 450-500. And the main thing was we fitted a different transmission. We fitted the 350 transmission. You may ask yourself now why they did it, or why KTM did it. Just to save money? No, it was the performance approach, because the 350 transmission was already the most compact and the toughest that we had in our whole engine platforms. So we took that, put it into the 450, which had a bigger layout, and to be honest, it wasn't that robust as the 350. So out of testing on like brake test and also on the engine dyno, we recognized really the 350 is the toughest one. Put it into the 450 and 500, really hired or increased the performance of the bike when you ride it, and it's now more compact. So we were able to drop like 300 grams of weight only due to that. So it means now we have from 250, 350, 450, 500, everywhere the same transmission, same shifting mechanism, all the same, and it's no compromise. Every single capacity improved on performance, and you will surely see that when you ride it. So also from a customer perspective, you have to see if a dealer has to put for each capacity a dedicated transmission on his shop, he would never do that. If he's now aware that every single displacement like 250, 350, 450, 500, as mentioned, have the same one, a dealer will surely put them on stock. And at the end, it's a big plus also for the customer, because availability is a thing that we have to be aware also. On the 450, we also did completely redesign the cylinder head and valve cover structure. So we only have now 2 bolts screwed the valve cover to the cylinder head, and we will also again get rid of weight and it's now a smarter solution, easy to maintain. Also, you can see if you check valve clearance in the bike, it's way easier than before and really intuitive working on the engines. Basically the same on the 500. What we also did on the 450 and 500, we introduced copper beryllium bushing on the small conrod bore. This is new because it used to be blank. This is also a big improvement on 450, 500, friction-wise and also in maintenance. In development, you see there are so many things, so this was only a real shortcut of the changes. But I wanted to put a spotlight on some specific things we did during the development phase. And one thing which is pretty interesting, I think, for you guys to know is the quick shifter. So you can see the quick shifter hardware behind me is quite simple. So it's a magnet that is fixed to the shift drum and a sender that catches the signal and then controls the ECU. But the tough thing was to get the software, the right software development and the application on each individual capacity. So this was the main task, and it really took us thousands of hours to get it properly. So you have to mention you cannot take development on a 250, put it on a 500, won't work at all. Also 250 on 350, won't work. So you see, this was quite a challenge for our engineering team, and it's only upshift, surely, because ride-by-wire is forbidden by the rule books for enduro as well as motocross. So off-road sports, there is, except rally, no ride-by-wire. So therefore you can't downshift. It's only upshift, and it's activated from second gear on. You may ask yourself, now why not from first gear on like the street bikes? Yeah, for sure, for street bikes, doesn't matter if you go from first to second, and with the neutral in between, you don't properly shift, you may hit neutral. On a street bike, it doesn't matter. On an off-road bike, if you go to hit a jump and you fall into neutral, everybody of us is aware with these worst case scenario. Nobody wants that. That's why it's deactivated. As I said, it was really, we wanted a safe behavior. It operates different if you go partial load, full load. It's always a bit different, and the main aim was to really, it should proper work under every condition. So we could make thousands of files for the racer, the hobby rider, and that's really the middle that fits all. And we just started this, and we will surely go up with it again. So you can expect to come up more with that. Another topic that I would like to put the spotlight on is the so-called smart shared part strategy. I call it like that. It's when we see, you can see at this animation on the left, the 450 engine casing, and on the right, the 250, 350 engine casing. And you can see with the green bolts, those are the engine mounts to the chassis, and they fit. So means we have the same chassis for 250, 350, 450, 500. Now, again, you may ask yourself why they did it, save money. No, again, it's the performance approach. You really have to think about developing a chassis is always about stiffness, tuning the stiffness, and you have to mention when you have several different down tubes, several different interreference points to the engine, this is always quite a big impact on the stiffness. So going with 3-4 different is really hard for the chassis department to tune it properly. Going with one is really the direction that we wanted, because then we could really tune it perfectly. And I think we never made a bigger step with a chassis than this time. So you can see, and again, the additional plus for the customer that it's the same part and it will be available easier, and the dealer has more on stock than like it would be dedicated for everyone. May sound now quite similar to have only these 3 bolting points, the same, but the engine housing has so many tasks to do. So it has to house all the components, transmission, shifting, crankshaft and so on, and still has to be super lightweight, super compact, and then additionally putting the boundary conditions with the same mounting points, because when you see the 450 engine and the 250, they are way different from layout. So this was really a big task, big challenge for designers and the chief engineers, and that's why I'm actually pretty proud that we made it, and to unify it and really get performance then at the chassis development. I would now like to go on with what's really new and exciting for most of you guys. It's the TBI. TBI stands for throttle body injection. I have a small animation in behind. You will see air entering the air boot. It's the blue dots, goes through the throttle body, the reed valve into the crankcase. At low RPMs, we operate or we activate the front injector. It's the yellow dots, that's the fuel mass. We have two injectors on our throttle body. It's one sitting in front, one sitting behind the flap. And you can see now at the transfer points, it enters into the combustion chamber for sure. And at higher RPM, there's the second activator then, the second injector activated, because then we need more fuel mass. And it sprays on the flap to generate more homogeneous air-fuel mixture. So higher mass, more homogeneous air-fuel mixture. That's why we have also the second injector. And that's the main advantage, or the big advantage. You see all the long distances, the air-fuel mass has to go, the mixture is getting better. When we go with TPI, the transfer port injection, we had the injectors sitting on the transfer pods, and it was harder to get the homogeneous mixture in the combustion chamber. So anyways, it isn't a homogeneous mixture. There are some lean spots, some rich spots, and it really infects the combustion. And when you have to imagine if you have those longer distances and really a proper air-fuel mixture, it's way easier and it's running way more stable with this. Another remarkable thing that we introduced on the two-stroke engines is the electric power valve. So we are not the first one to bring it, but we are the first one to do it, or we bring it our way with special kinematics. You can see the electric motor acting the shaft. On the shafts attached there are some cams, and the cams move the exhaust flap. Later on, they also, via spur gear, they act the auxiliary exhaust ports, so that we don't have these. We have a step motion and a constant motion, both, and fully field controlled with the electric motor. So I can show it really good on the cut model. So you can see here now I act as the electric motor. Here's the cam, and this acts the flap. So you can see it starts to move the flap. So we go from idle. If it's speed controlled, we move the flap, and then the auxiliary exhaust ports start. And with this, so you can see they're first closed, flap already starts, and then the auxiliary exhaust ports open. And it's all made, the components you can see, out of metal injection molding, which is also something new we introduced here, and the only way to do it properly. Because if you go with like casting or fork parts, well, it would take way more design place. So there's a really smart, compact solution that we have here. And as I said, it's fully field controlled. So we were able to get rid of the mechanical speed controller that was located over here. And we have now two parameters, or even more, but two input parameters. It's engine speed and throttle position. Because on the predecessor, you don't have these throttle positions. So when you're hitting a specific speed range, the flap open. Now it's also taking the throttle position into concern. And two different fields. So if you have the map switch, then you have the availability of two different maps and two different power valve characteristics. And this is a way different feeling than before. So you can recognize in the white map, the more mellow map, a really smooth transition, smooth behavior. You don't lose traction. And in green, it's really hitting more hard, not ultra hard, because in enduro you still have to keep traction, but harder than the really mellow one. And this is a huge difference compared to the predecessor, where the only big change is the ignition curve. So I want to go a little bit more into detail on the different displacements, starting with the 150, which is our entry model. We completely redesigned the engine casing. We dropped the mechanical speed controller structure. We dropped the kickstart structure. On the mechanical speed controller, it's pretty clear why we did it. On the Kickstarter, the e-start systems got so robust the last century that we believe there's no demand of a Kickstarter anymore. And if you go that way, you have to imagine you don't want to blow a 150 engine up to be that heavy like a 500. It should be the super lightweight, super performant, and that's why we went with this approach. So all that I told you on the 450 or on the 4-stroke engine casings with the ladders on it, the tightening torques, it's all the same from 250 4-stroke. Also 150 has the same features, smart design ideas that we had on the 4-strokes. On the 150 we still have the same crankshaft, the same piston. We have a completely redesigned cylinder featuring the same port and port timings, but improved cooling jacket, and we have the revolutionary new electric power valve and the kinematics that I already mentioned before, and that's really the game changer that you can feel on the 150. It gained lots of torque down low compared to the predecessor, and it's now really also you can do hard stuff with that one really good. Moving on to 250 300. The 250 and 300 also have a completely redesigned engine casing. They do have the same transmission and shifting mechanism as the 4-stroke displacement, means now 250, 350, 450, 500, 250, 300, 2-stroke all have the same transmission. To be honest, the 250 and 300 already shared the transmission with the 350 on the predecessor. The only one who now has a dedicated gearing or a dedicated transmission is the 150, because putting the bigger transmission of the 350 would not make sense because you don't have those extra high loads, and we wanted to keep the really smart compact design that we had. So the 150 is the only one to have a dedicated gearbox, dedicated shifting mechanism and dedicated clutch and clutch basket as well, because otherwise if we would introduce it would have blown the engine, which we don't want it to. Another thing that it's new on the 250 and 300 is the chamber that you can see at the power valve, this chamber above. It's the so-called KTC, KTM torque chamber. We reintroduced it. I say reintroduced, why? Because it already got introduced on the famous KTM EXC 380, and now we reintroduced it, and it's acted via the power valve flap, which is I think a really smart solution. And if you can imagine, the power valve flap is actuated via an electric motor. It's now fully field controlled, so you have lots of opportunities down here. You can see this chamber. It's this chamber over here. You can see it, and it's actuated via the electric motor or the exhaust flap. So it means at low RPMs, you need more volume of the exhaust. This is always when you go like the enduro pipes, always bigger. And we managed this extra volume is like easily explained the bigger header pipe. But what you lose with bigger header pipes is the peak power. And we actuated so when we go up in speed, it closes this extra volume. And now you don't lose peak power. So there's a really smart 2-in-1 header pipe solution, I would say. And you will really feel the increased torque down low. So another cool feature, 250, 300 have this new feature. So we have completely redesigned cylinders, cylinder heads. They share the same low-end assembly. So basically 250 and 300, they really share the same low-end assembly. Means from piston on they differ. They have the same crankshaft. They're the only ones to do so. So dedicated piston and cylinder head on the 300 compared to the 250. They have dedicated port timing and so on. And that's where you really see the difference. Also for sure, completely different mapping. So you can see there's so many changes, and I could keep going explaining you for like hours, but that would completely blow the scope. So keep in mind, 95% new, you will surely feel this big difference and enjoy riding. Thanks.
Welcome back, Fabian. That was extremely interesting. I mean, I really learned a lot, the way the specialists talked to us about all the technical features. I don't know about you.
It's super interesting, Dieter.
No, really. But if we remember, before we came into the breakout sessions, I challenged you to give us 4 key takeaway points. And I know you now actually changed it to 5 key takeaway points. So I don't know if you want to highlight for us what's those 4 points again. I think you said starting on the frame was something really cool.
So one of the big topics about this all-new frame for the Model Year 24 EXC range is that it's much more rigid, stable, and it has a completely different shock mount. Besides that, the subframe now comes with an aluminium polyamide combination. So this allows riders, even in hard crashes, to finish the race.
That's so interesting. Then of course suspension, one of the most important parts on a motorbike.
Exactly. Suspension-wise, we made a big step forward. Now, for the first time, also we bring a WP Exact closed cartridge spring fork in our Enduro lineup. But that's not everything, Dieter. On the rear, we keep what is KTM tradition, a PDS rear shock system.
And then of course on the 4-stroke, there's a lot to talk about there.
Well, engine-wise, completely I agree, there's so much going on, but on the 250 platform especially, we made a big change. So the bore-stroke ratio is different than in the past. Josep Garcia, we've seen in the video, really enjoys that engine. More low-end power, more torquey character, revving through until the top range.
But we didn't stop there. 2-stroke.
2 strokes, of course, also there, something really special, and probably the thing people are most curious about. Because now finally, we also have the throttle body injection in our 2-stroke lineup.
Wow, Fabian, that's really cool. But as we know, we didn't just stop there. We also have KTM power parts.
Exactly. Actually, we run our own development team within R&D focused on power parts.
That's 100% correct. And if we look right here next to me, we've got one of those KTM power parts bikes. So we fitted this with all what we call the dream parts that I would put on my bike. And we can see from the exhaust, suspension, everything kitted out. And we know for enduro riders, one of the main features is customizing your bike for your specific riding needs.
Exactly.
But we don't just stop there. We also have KTM Powerwear. It's not just to look cool, but it's also functional.
Exactly, that's what the main point is about. Our power parts and Powerwear program is not about the look only, it's about function as well.
And then last but not least, don't forget, ready to race style. Always making sure we're getting to the podium.
Challenge accepted.
But now guys, let's get to riding and let's hear from one of the legends in the KTM racing field.
Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation so far. I unfortunately have to miss it. I'm just in Italy right now, testing for the Red Bull Erzgebirge, but I've been there last year in November, racing Roof of Africa, and we've been testing the bike there. So the place in Lesotho is mega, so I hope you guys gonna enjoy the ride. We prepared with the KTM team a pretty cool special stage, and I hope you guys are up for this challenge, and I will wish you quite a lot of fun and just rip the bike around the Lesotho mountains. So guys, have fun.
Fabian, I don't know about you, but that gave me total goosebumps. And I really can't wait to test out the new bike. So on that note, ready to race.